Well, a very pleasant good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever it may be to you. I'm James Jack. This is the Rock Your Block edition of Holmes Radio. And I am very pleased myself to have as my guest Miss Dawn Mabery. She is a consultant of a different sort in the sense that what she does, I wish I could do. I've always wanted to learn how to write grants, and I've always really wanted to know how do they raise money, campaign, organizations, churches, and things like that. And she is an expert. So, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, let's get started. You earned a degree. They opened the doors and they said, don't come back unless you've got plenty of money to buy, to sponsor a chair or, whatever the case may be, a foundation. So what happened after your days in school?
Okay. Well, I actually started out in the field of public relations, and how I actually got to doing grant writing, which is mostly what I do now, is I wish I could say it was a well thought out plan, but it all just sort of happened according to me taking advantage of different opportunities that were presented before me. So I worked at several nonprofit organizations.
Would you name one or two?
One is the National Immigration Forum. Mm-hmm. I also worked at the Clinton Foundation.
The Clinton Foundation?
Yes. So I worked at several different, organizations. Yes.
Okay, I understand.
But anyone knows working at, a medium to small size nonprofit organization mm-hmm. that you wear a number of hats. You don't just sort of do what you were hired to do. And during the course of that, some of the work I began doing was, grant writing and putting together information for funders and managing grant making funds. It was just all things that just needed to be done at a time, and they needed a warm body to do it.
Did you learn this on your own, or did they teach you?
Well, yes, it was on the job learning.
So it was hit or miss?
It was kind of like, we need someone to do this. Here's how it needs to be done. Take the ball and run with it, yes.
And so you ran with it?
Yes.
You scored touchdowns?
I'd like to think so. I'm sure there were some misses. But overall, it was a good experience.
Okay. Now, one of the foundations that you worked for, you said, was with the Clintons. There are two Clintons. So was this as a result of the campaign management, or was this, how presidential administrations have lots of organizations that just do lots of work for them, and they get a little pat on the back and a little thing at Christmas?
Well, at the Clinton Foundation, I actually was a scheduler for President Clinton. And of course, this was after his presidency, so it had nothing to do with that. But I was a scheduler for him. And most people don't understand what that is, but people of his stature usually have a scheduling team. And he had about 5 people who were part of his scheduling department. And our job was to make sure his schedule, his long-term and immediate schedules were planned out, and all the logistics were in order according to the finest detail.
Were
like
you
putting on a mic?
Were you, as they say, in the house, or were you out in the field?
It was primarily a desk job.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, we would go to events and do what's called advance work, where you go and make
mm-hmm.
sure everything's in line
mm-hmm.
for elected officials and people of that stature. But it was primarily a desk job.
So you made a lot of contacts, and one of them said, we need you to come to work for us.
Well, actually, after I left the Clinton Foundation, I went to work for, at the time, Senator Clinton's presidential campaign.
Ah, okay.
And the whole purpose of that position was to head up, do some political scheduling for a lot of the, her surrogates, people mm-hmm. who will go out on her behalf to different events around the country mm-hmm. To speak for her. And so that's what I did after I left the Clinton Foundation.
So you learned how to glad hand, you learned where the bones are buried, where the money is.
I don't know about all that.
I don't mean those bones, I'm talking about, a lot of times when we see something done, we don't realize what happened in the process of getting there.
Right.
And a lot of things happen, a lot of doors are shut, closed,
right.
open, or whatever, so you were able to learn the
those
ground rules.
Right, and from those two positions, I would definitely say that one of the biggest takeaways was learning to deal with a number of different personalities, whether it was a secretary or whether it was a diplomat, because we work with donors, we work with celebrities, we work with their staff. So
Celebrities?
We dealt with a wide range of, different types of people.
Oprah?
No, I did not have the pleasure of working with Oprah.
Okay.
But
So now we're at the point where you've got a little experience under your belt, and you wind up in this place where they're saying to you, we need money, and we need money, and we need money.
okay.
Make it happen.
All right. Well, okay. So after I worked for Senator Clinton's presidential campaign, I worked at a nonprofit organization again where I was wearing a number of different hats, and one of them was sort of doing some grant stuff on the side. And after I left that position, I was actually looking for another position when people who I had worked with previously knew of my skills and asked me if I could do some work with them while I looked for another position.
Some of your old Spelman cronies?
I
did my homework.
From different sources, but yes, some people came to me and asked if I could help out on different projects, and a lot of it was in the grant making world, and so I worked on a couple of projects here and there, and this is more than 2.5 years later where I've actually built a business around doing this full time.
Okay, two roads are diverging in the woods.
Right.
One of them is going in the direction of grant writing, and the other is going in the direction of fundraising. Which would you choose at this moment to talk about?
I would choose to talk about grant writing because that's what I do a lot of, and that's what I find that a lot of nonprofits need, the kind of help they need most immediately. And I'll explain the difference between what fundraising is and what grant writing is. Grant writing is just that. You're writing specifically narratives and proposals specific to each grant that organization wants to respond to. It also involves some researching of grants, and that's typically what a grant writer does. They write the grant, they do a bit of research to identify grants to pursue. A fundraiser, their job is just as important and all the more encompassing. Fundraisers are typically financial directors at nonprofit organizations, and they are looking at the organization as a whole, and they're looking at what are the short-term financial needs, what are the long-term financial needs. They're planning things like annual events, major events with lots of bodies and sponsors.
Where I met you.
Right. So they're thinking on a much more broader spectrum than just the grant writer who's writing specifically for a specific grant.
Okay, now, which one we're going to take first, the grant writing or the fundraising?
We're going to go through grant writing.
Okay.
Right.
I just started a nonprofit organization, Save the Turkeys that survived. Okay, I think in my heart this is a good idea. I formed a nonprofit organization. I had to actually do my homework and find out which type of nonprofit organization I had to be under, because different types of funding and things like that matter here. What do? I just walked in and you told me, sit down, you've got questions and you've got answers.
Well, as an advisor to you, the first thing I would like to know, I would advise you on getting organized. So I realize you just started a nonprofit organization, but what is your vision? What are the things that you're planning to do, at least for the next year, that will need money? What are those projects? What are those events? Are they well thought out? They would need to be well thought out because you would need to put an explanation of what those projects are in writing to a funder. So the very first step is mapping out what you want to do. And that means, what projects you want to pursue, how much do you think these projects are going to cost, what timeline, when will you need the funding. And so all of that will help you to backtrack and set your timeline for the rest of the process of researching and finding grant opportunities.
Well, my cousin Ricky and his wife Lucy formed an organization not too long ago, and now they've got money rolling in. I'll just copy what they did. Will that work for me, or am I just really shooting in the dark?
Well, ethically, no, that shouldn't work for you.
Who cares about this? Hey.
But ethically, no. But if your organizations share the same mission and it's similar, then yes, you might be able to talk to your family and get some tips on how they got to the point where they are. But in terms of simply copying what another organization did, I don't think that's going to get you very far, but you can glean some best practices and some best exercises that they experienced.
Well, mission is sort of like boy meets girl stuff, love at first sight. I go into an organization and I say, give me some money, and they look at me and they sort of get a feel as to whether or not we're on the same page. Is mission that important?
Oh, yes, it is. In fact, I believe the number one reason for reasons why a grant application is declined is because of something in this field called a mission mismatch. If what you are planning to do with your organization does not meet the goals of what the funder would like to pursue, then you're not going to get funding from them.
So it really has very little to do with the kind of music I listened to growing up. Wink, wink.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So it requires doing your homework, making sure that both of the organization's missions are aligned, and going from there.
Okay. Now that we've gotten that part down, what are you going to tell me next?
Okay. Once you've gotten that part down, I would take you through the process of getting your grant resources together. So beginning the process of actually going out to look for potential funders. And the first step of that process, I would advise nonprofits is sitting down and coming up with a list of what funders do you already know? Do you have that information in an Excel spreadsheet with contact information and your history with that organization, with that funder, so that you know moving forward how best to pursue moving forward with them? So first, starting with what resources you already have, and that's having a conversation with the executive director, with your finance committee, your development team, your board, even your staff. Contacts for grant, for funders can come from anywhere. So definitely use the resources you have at hand to first come up with, okay, who do we already know? Who have we already had a history with?
Okay, so I'm making my list, I'm checking it twice. I spotted some people who are going to work for me. When we come back from the break, you're going to tell me, how do I make this work? I'm James Jack, and this is Holmes Radio's edition of Rock Your Block. My guest, Ms. Dawn Mabery, is here with me, and we'll be right back.
Channel 10 doesn't have ratings, and we can't read your mind. The only way we know that you're watching is if you tell us. Let us know you enjoy a show on Channel 10 by leaving a message on our viewer comment line. It's a local call, and you don't have to leave your name. Thank you for supporting local television.
Welcome back. I'm James Jack. This is Holmes Radio, Rock Your Block, and my guest is Ms. Dawn Mabery. She works for herself. She has no boss. She tells everybody what to do, and as a result, she's become filthy rich, helping people to write grants and also to raise money. We were talking about getting everything together, lining the ducks up so that you will make a good presentation to those organizations that you want to fund you. Okay, now what do we do now that we've got everything lined up? I'm assuming this is paperwork.
Right.
This isn't the tie and suit and the
No,
pearls
we
and
haven't
things
even
yet.
reached that point yet.
So we're in the office now.
Yeah, we're still at the desk doing the research.
Okay, making
Yes,
calls, dialing for
exactly,
dollars.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me.
Okay, so we left off of us putting together our list of funders that we already know.
Researching.
Right, so that's part of the research process. There are also resources out there, free resources out there, that will provide databases of contact information for funders around the country that you can also search to see if you can find additional funders to
Now let me
add
get
to
this
your
right.
list.
Here are people or organizations in these databases. Most people, when you go to them and you say, give me some money, they look at you like, but what you're saying is there are actually sources of funding out there that are willing and able, provided you come to them correct.
Exactly. And so one of those resources is the Foundation Center. As far as I know of, it is a great starting point for free information. They have a database of over 110,000 grant makers around the country that you can search. So you go in and put your geographic location, what issue you are trying to raise money for, what part of the country you're in, and it can spit out a big list of funders that can give to you. And then your next step, it can spit out a list of 100 organizations. Now, all of those 100 organizations might not match you perfectly, so you would then go through that list and making sure that everything matched up according to what you needed and what the funder wanted to support to narrow it down to a more workable list. And I call that fine-tuning your list. The name of that source is? Again, that is the Foundation Center. And if you just Google that, their website has a wealth of free information. They have webinars on grant writing, free webinars that you can watch in the comfort of your home. They also give in-person free classes, and there are also some classes that you can pay for as well. But there's a lot of free information on their website.
Well, that should be easy. Even Donald, Mickey, and Goofy know about Google, so
right.
We've got that down. Now, right. That's just one source, so we don't need to go through this pile of sources. We just know that you got to go out and start looking. You got to get your hands dirty.
Right.
You got to knock on doors.
Right.
Okay. Am I looking at this word called application process?
Yes. So that would be the next step. After you've done your research and you've got a good list of organizations you want to pursue that you feel are good fits, I always instruct my clients to, even though you got information from a database, you might not know how old that information has been there. So you want to use the databases as a first step, but then once you got your really good list, go directly to the funder's website and confirm all of the information that is very important, like when is the application due? How much funding do they typically give? Do they really give in my geographic location? Do they still give to this interest area? How do they prefer to be contacted? All of those kinds of things you'll want to make sure you confirm directly with the funder's website. And that's all a part of their application process. So they'll have that information.
My organization, which will save the turkeys next year, shouldn't be wasting time going to automobile safety sites.
Right.
Okay, got that part. Right. Okay.
Right. So once you have all of that really good information on your good list of, 25 funders, I also would suggest making some initial calls, and you can determine who best at your organization would be best to place these initial calls. And when you're placing these initial calls, you're really looking to get a feel from the foundation, sort of what is their response to what they're telling you on the phone. Yeah, you found this information on the website, it all seems to work out, but let's see if we can make, some personal contact now that we've got this information. And when I say determine who the best person is, it might not always be your development director. It might not always be the executive director. It might be someone who has a personal relationship with someone at that organization. So it might be a board member. It might be a staff person. So make some decisions around that list of foundations you already have of who should be the person reaching out initially, saying, hey, we think this is a great fit, just wanted to have a quick conversation, confirm some information we found on your website, and then move on to the next steps, and just gauge reactions from there.
So why should I go bald trying to do all of this when I can hire someone to do it for me? Would you suggest that, or would you suggest I try to find out, try to learn myself?
Well, of course, I would suggest you hire someone like myself to provide that service. And a lot of small nonprofits don't have the staff to do this type of work.
Are they even aware of it?
A lot of them, they're aware, but they don't even know where to begin. A lot of my clients that come to me, it's like, I know this stuff is out there. I don't even have the slightest clue how to begin the process.
So they're still working in the bedroom.
Trying
to get into the dining room.
And they just have so many other things going on with the organization that they have to take care of that, this piece, they just can't find the time to manage. So they hire people like grant writers to do that for them. But in the case where they can hire a full-time development director, that is certainly the best option.
What if someone figured, okay, rather than me do all of this because I can't quit my day job, is it feasible to actually hire a grant writer? You know, I mean, is it affordable, or are we talking about Cadillac, or are we talking about Toyota, or, you know?
Well, it depends on what the organization want. If they want the full range of services that a fundraiser / a development director provides, those are typically full-time staff positions at an organization. So yeah, you can liken that to the Cadillac version. But if you simply want someone to get out, you know, a few grants per month or that sort of thing, and you don't have the budget to really afford the full-time fundraiser or a more detailed, you know, set of, you know, scope of work from a contractor, then the grant writer is definitely the next best option. And a lot of organizations do that.
It'd be nice to have an app for my iPhone that would do that,
That-
and all
well,
that,
that-
and
that's a
there it
great
is.
idea.
You know, go to the mailbox and there's my check.
That's a
I
great
know it's not that
idea.
easy. Proposal materials. I
Yes.
stared at this forever. What is proposal materials?
So as a part of the application process, you're putting together, these funders are gonna give you a laundry list of things that you need to put together to include in your application packet. And some standard things that they ask for, they wanna know, what is your organization's mission? That's like the first thing.
Do I have to tell the truth?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So other things that they would want to know, they want to know, okay, so what is your work plan for accomplishing what you're setting out to do? What are some measurable results that you are going to hold yourself accountable to so that you can know whether or not your program was effective? What are all of your financials? So the organization's annual budget, what is your budget specifically for this project? What are your last audited financials? They want you to answer, why should we give to you? What makes your organization special that we should give to you and maybe not your competition in the area?
You know what this sounds like?
What is that?
Sounds like a business plan.
Ah.
You know, I want to go down to the Small Business Administration. I want $1 million. They want to see $1 million business plan.
Well, it's very similar to that, yes. They want to know, what is your plan for meeting this objective? And they want to know that you have a good plan in place and that you're going to hold yourself accountable. And they want to feel that makes them feel comfortable in giving you the money to do that.
We've done all of that. Now we submit the proposal.
Yep.
Is it time to party?
No.
No
We
party
haven't
yet.
gotten an award letter and a check yet.
Okay.
So a lot of people think, okay, so I submitted my proposal and there's really nothing for me to do except sit back and wait until I hear back from them. But there are some things that organizations should consider while they are waiting to hear back.
And one of those would be?
First and foremost would be make sure that they actually received your material. So we do a lot of things through electronically now, and sometimes our electronics fail us. So you definitely want to try to get some written or verbal communication from someone that they actually did receive all of your materials. That's first and foremost.
Okay.
And number two, some other things you should consider while you're waiting to hear back. Has your leadership changed? Has the executive director, has your organization's changed executive directors after submitting the proposal material? Has anyone on the board changed since submitting the material? So you want to be proactive in informing your funders of those types of changes. Also, if there are any financial changes with the organization, you want to let them know that as well. Oftentimes when you submit a proposal for a project, you're often submitting that proposal maybe for the same project to several funders. In fact, funders don't like to be the only funder for a project. They like to see that you're getting funds from different sources. So it's highly likely that word from one of those other funders may come in, either giving you some portion of the money as well. So you should proactively just inform your funder of those types of things while you're waiting to hear back. They'll appreciate that.
And what about my cousin Cindy? When she calls me and tells me, you'll never get the money, you're wasting your time.
I wouldn't listen to Cousin Cindy. I'm not sure why Cousin Cindy is telling you that.
There's always, and usually around Thanksgiving and Christmas, the holidays, they nudge up to you and tell you, you'll never make it. But we've made it.
No.
We've made it.
Okay, so in the instant that you did get the grant, that's awesome. But know that there's accountability. We've already talked about putting some measurements in place to make sure you're holding yourself responsible.
No trips to Punta Cana.
No. When you get the money, what's going to come with the check is likely an award letter. And that award letter is an agreement. You should treat it like a contract. And it lays out the terms of, you know, the understanding for spending the money. So read it, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's what you understood that it should say. And if there are any discrepancies or you have questions, certainly reach out and get clarification from the funder.
Do you need an attorney for
No,
all of this?
no. You don't need an attorney.
We can't make any money on this one, huh?
No.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Okay.
So you'll get the award letter, you'll get the check. Sometimes you have to sign some portion of the award letter, acknowledging receipt and, you know, agreement of terms, and send it back. But you will always definitely don't get the money for one purpose and then spend it on another. That is a big no-no in the grant world.
Party pooper. And on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up very quickly. I really enjoyed the conversation with you, and of course I will be calling you too. This is my guest, Miss Dawn Mabery. She is her own boss. She knows how to write grants, get money for your organization if you're a nonprofit, and we'll be talking more next time about the people who didn't get those grants. James Jack, Homes Radio, Rock Your Block. What can I say? I can tell you this, be kind to yourself. After all, it's your heart. Goodbye.